The United States may attack Venezuela soon, with 14% of its navy now deployed to the Caribbean Sea. Venezuelan President Mazer says there shouldn't be a crazy war, but President Trump said he'll kill them all. Let's directly examine the rising tensions in Venezuela, as recent news reports have highlighted the situation, but these were very clear signs of war. The United States military has deployed the Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier and its fleet near Venezuela. This is seen as the United States' strongest military move against Venezuela. The United States typically sends an aircraft carrier fleet nearby before war starts. One aircraft carrier fleet can surpass most countries' entire air force in air power. The United States claimed it was an anti-drug mission, but sending an aircraft carrier fleet stronger than Venezuela's military to Central and South American waters hints at preparation for future military action. The Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier fleet is currently in Croatia, about 8,000 kilometers from the Caribbean Sea, so the trip will likely take up to a week. The United States continues moving strategic assets near the Caribbean Sea. On October 23rd, a United States B-1 bomber flew within 80 kilometers of the Venezuelan coast, raising military pressure on Venezuela. And before that, they flew 3 B-52 bombers over international waters near Venezuela. It's like a rehearsal, with frequent bomber flights near Venezuela. Fox News reports that 14% of United States naval power is now in the Caribbean, and this force appears to have more than just a pressure role. President Trump told reporters at the White House that ground operations in Venezuela would start soon. He said he'd inform Congress about plans against Venezuela-related drug cartels, but didn't think a war declaration was needed, further escalating tensions. President Trump gradually increased the intensity. Currently, President Trump has directly experienced drug manufacturing facilities and drug trafficking routes within Venezuela. There are reports he's considering an offensive approach. Venezuela is not a major drug producer. The Trump administration has frequently highlighted the Maduro regime's ties to drug trafficking. In the past month, United States military airstrikes in the Caribbean destroyed 10 drug trafficking vessels and killed 43 people. Even within the United States, there is debate over why these attacks happened without congressional approval. The Trump administration remains undeterred and is increasing attacks, insisting drug inflow into the United States must stop. They are now willing to directly attack Venezuelan territory. Most experts see domestic airstrikes on Venezuela as part of President Trump's strategy to weaken the Maduro regime. There are also rumors that the United States may try to eliminate President Maduro of Venezuela with airstrikes. The Maduro government in Venezuela is now cornered. President Maduro of Venezuela told the United States he would step down after 3 years in office. However, President Trump told reporters at the White House he would simply kill drug smugglers as if to send a message to Venezuela. President Maduro also spoke in English, stating Venezuela wants peace and this war shouldn't happen. He messaged President Trump directly and said on state television that the United States is trying to start a war. What about United States military equipment or troops now or soon in the Caribbean? Fighter jets have risen from at least 16 to over 60, and Tomahawk missiles from up to 140 to at least 236. The United States military added 4,500 troops in a week, marking its largest presence in almost 30 years. Some say if President Trump only wanted to destroy drug cartels, sending aircraft carriers or bombers wouldn't make sense. It feels like using a flamethrower to catch a bug. As I said earlier, there's an analysis suggesting President Trump is doing this to pressure leftist regimes in South America. The Trump administration already showed similar behavior during its first term. They backed the National Assembly Speaker as interim president to remove President Maduro, triggering a political crisis in Venezuela. There was actually an attempted coup. The attempt failed, but it appears the United States is preparing again to overthrow the Venezuelan government. And they are also in the process of severing ties with Colombia. Colombia has maintained a pro-American stance for a long time. After the leftist government took office in 2022, Colombia slowly distanced itself from the United States. Colombian President Petro openly criticized President Trump at the United Nations, and he even attended protests that took place in New York. He also criticized the United States when it attacked drug transport vessels. The United States and Colombia's relationship eventually broke down. The United States imposed economic sanctions on President Petro of Colombia, his family, and associates, triggering conflict between Colombia and the United States. President Trump then called President Petro of Colombia a drug lord and questioned Colombia's commitment to fighting drugs. Afterwards, the Colombian ambassador, Juman, was recalled to his home country and the conflict between the United States and Colombia gradually intensified. The United States appears to be stepping up pressure on South America's left-wing regimes. Whether President Trump will launch a ground attack here remains to be seen. While this is the largest United States troop deployment in nearly 30 years, the current 14,500 troops are still insufficient for a full-scale ground operation. Venezuela's terrain is a complex mix of jungles and mountains, and there are also many densely populated urban areas, so a significant number of troops would be needed to prepare for an operation. The small Venezuelan military is focusing resources on defending the capital, with militias and pro-government forces also present. If the United States military rushes into ground combat here, it risks a long, unexpected war. For the United States, it's more efficient to target the regime's main command centers and bases with precision airstrikes, then use internal anti-government forces for regime change. The deployment of United States strategic assets is already focused on this kind of air-centric operation, and even if an actual war breaks out, it is highly likely that the United States will combine limited strikes and political pressure rather than direct ground occupation. If the United States actually orders airstrikes against Venezuela, the operation is expected to unfold very quickly and precisely. The United States will likely first use satellite reconnaissance and unmanned reconnaissance aircraft to perfectly identify the locations of Venezuela's air defense network, command and control centers, and missile bases, and then carry out precision strikes using Tomahawk cruise missiles and stealth bombers. The first objective is to paralyze the air defense network and military communication channels centered around the capital, Caracas. If this happens, the Venezuelan military will lose contact with the outside world, and chaos will truly begin. With the electronic warfare unit jamming signals and boosting global positioning system, guided missile accuracy, the Venezuelan military will take heavy losses early on. The Presidential Guard, Ministry of Defense, and Military Intelligence Agency buildings, all critical to the Maduro regime, will become main targets. This airstrike aims to wipe out the regime's command structure, not just serve as a warning. It is analyzed that the United States is essentially attempting a decapitation operation through this. If President Maduro tries to hide or escape overseas, there is a high possibility that the same special forces will be deployed on the ground to carry out an operation to capture or eliminate him. After that, the United States is expected to carry out a temporary occupation operation focused on the northern coast. The Marines will secure key ports and airports to work with local anti-government forces and trigger internal collapse. As the United States has secretly contacted Venezuelan opposition figures, it could speed up the regime's collapse through joint operations. But the problem comes after that. In order to wage such a war, it needs to be discussed with Congress first. There's major conflict between United States ruling and opposition parties, and the government shutdown remains unresolved. This could prevent the United States from conducting the war smoothly. Venezuela's rugged mountains and dense jungles have militia forces entrenched in every region. Even if the capital falls, local forces and militias will likely switch to guerrilla warfare, prolonging the war. It could become a second Afghanistan for the United States military, something they didn't expect. If ground troops are exposed to militia attacks in the jungle, the battle could drag on and casualties could increase. Even if the United States is technologically superior, it's very difficult to fully control the current terrain and public sentiment. Although this operation will mainly use airstrikes, if it becomes a prolonged war, war fatigue could quickly spread in the United States. Ultimately, these variables will likely shape the Trump administration's future decisions. Above all, if the United States appears to falter even slightly while conducting the war, China might miscalculate and decide to invade Taiwan. The United States is increasing its war preparations and plans to deploy an aircraft carrier strike group nearby. What do you think about the situation? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching.